Hello, everybody. Welcome to Maker Monday. If you have been part of the last few Maker Mondays with the altered books, this is a perfect segue into the next thing. And if not, it's still going to be an amazing day. I have Destina Paige with me. She's an art educator in Indiana and has Louisiana roots and is also an artist, and her stuff is amazing. It is so, so cool. And it's one of those beautiful connections. And again, I talk about the silver linings in 2020, and Destina for sure is one. In fact, she starts off as a rusty lining and it turns into something beautiful. And so I've got sort of my makeshift steam kind of stuff here with this. I got the science catalog and I got some chemicals, which aren't even the right ones, but I just wanted to look like I was super science and arty at the same time. So I don't want to take up too much time because this is going to be packed full. Handout in the side panel. So on your computer or laptop or whatever, there's a side panel and there's a spot for a handout that you can download. Sometimes it's tricky, and if you can't download it, don't panic. Email me and I will send it to you. There's an email that will come out about an hour after the session, and you can respond to that, but you will also get the link. In case you didn't know, that's the link right there, to the session that you can watch again and you can share it with somebody. So with that, Destina, thank you so much for being here, and please show us your amazing eco prints.
I will. Thank you so much for having me, Kris. I'm honored to be here, and I'm so glad everyone has signed up for this workshop. Okay, I want to make sure am I on the entire screen or?
Yep, you don't have to do anything. You can just ignore that.
Okay, all right. Well, first of all, I wanted to kind of go through the whole process with everybody. So let me flip. Okay, the first thing I'm going to talk about is your mordants. Mordants are what fix the dyes or fix the prints of the leaves to the paper, okay? So as far as mordants, there's two ways you can do it. You can put a tablespoon of alum and copper sulfate in a spray bottle and spritz your paper, or you can have like a little container with the solution. It's mixed with warm water. I always use hot water though. Hot water and your alum and your copper sulfate, and you can just soak your watercolor paper in the container for about, I always soak mine, if I'm not spritzing, I'll soak for about 15 minutes is good, 15 to 30 minutes, no more. And it also depends on how thick and heavy your watercolor paper is, because it can stand more absorbency. So I have my big container of alum, which is potassium aluminum sulfate. What you'll do is you'll use a tablespoon of that, and you'll also use a tablespoon of copper sulfate, which I have a huge, huge jar. And you'll put that in hot water and you'll let it dissolve. I just swish it around with my gloved hand. Make sure you have gloved hands because these are chemicals at all times. And then after soaking my paper and pulling it out or spritzing my paper, then I start to make what I call a sandwich. Now, for this sandwich, you're going to need bread. Bread in this case are 2 ceramic tiles, and it's a good idea to have them the same size as your paper if you can. That's like a perfect fit. If you're using wood, then same thing. You want your wood, and these have been used a lot, but you want your wood to be the same size as your paper. So I have various sizes of wood and tiles depending on what size my paper is. You can also, instead of pre-cutting your paper, you can have it folded in an accordion if you know you're going to make a booklet out of it. or if you're going to be gluing and adding this to your altered books, then you can have individual sheets. Either way is fine. So what you do is you lay down a tile, and your paper is soaked in the mordant. And these are all the things that you're going to be building up your sandwich with, or the ingredients of your sandwich. You have your veggies, you have your red cabbage, which gives you blues. And these are just canned beets, which are drained and sliced. But you can also slice them thinner if you need to as you build your sandwich. But these give you pinks. And then, of course, you have your onion skins, which give you yellows and oranges. And in the batch I made this morning, I forgot to put any onion skins in there, but that's okay because I'm going to be showing you how they will look. And then you have purple carrots. Now, these veggies aren't required, just like none of this is required. If all you want to do is just print your leaves, of course you can do that. But it's just these all enhance your prints with the different colors. So purple carrots can be cut in slivers or circles, and they give a beautiful purple dye. And then we have, of course, the rusty iron bits. I'm fortunate enough where I live by a railroad, so I'm constantly seeing rusty washers and pieces of rusty metal. Everywhere I go, I'm always looking down, and if I see something, I have a little box in my car, and I just slip it in there for later. But I have a vast collection of rusty objects, and some I've gotten from antique shops and whatnot, but I'm still trying to print that beautiful, beautiful imprint there. And when you have things like the door hinges, what you can do is, as you're building and you're building your prints, these can go on the ends. Like this part, of course, you would not put in here because then it wouldn't go flat. You want your pieces to be as flat as you possibly can get them, because you want your sandwich to be as tight, or your bundle to be as tight as it possibly can. So when I have things like this, I always put it on the edge like this, or you could put it on the top, but any of the borders is fine. So now would be a good time, if you're not planning on doing this right now, but you're planning on doing it maybe in the spring when all the leaves are back on the trees, or in the summer. Now would be a good time to start collecting those rusty bits. And also, if you have like an auto yard that someone would let you walk around in your area, I have also found a lot of rusty parts there. Flea markets, antique shops, I'm always scrounging for rusty metal to include in my art. Okay, so now also a very important component is, of course, leaves. Now, most leaves that print, I have found, are good printers are the flowering trees and the trees that have nuts in them. Your walnut trees, your pecan trees, your almond trees, your oaks are very good printers. Your maples are extremely good printers. Sweet gum or liquid amber. Anything that's in your area, not necessarily all leaves print, but most leaves do leave a print. And whenever you have your leaves, the vein side, or the side that faces the ground or the soil, it has to be on your paper. That gives the darkest print. So all of your veggies that you have, okay, you have all your veggies set aside, you have your rusty objects, you have your paper, you have your tiles, you're going to need twine, you got your scissors. You also need a dish of vinegar, just white distilled vinegar. You're going to dip all of your veggies in onion skins and eucalyptus, if you have any, in vinegar. Your leaves and your rusty objects get dipped in iron water. That's the one mordant I didn't talk about. Iron water is iron sulfate. Iron sulfate can be purchased also from Nasco. All of these mordants can be purchased from Nasco. Or you can make your own iron water. And to make your own iron water, all you do is you have some rusty nails or any type of rusty metal. You put it in a sealed container. Those thick Tupperware containers with lids, I find work very well. That's what I have mine in. And you just put some in there and you pour some vinegar in there. And it sits for about 2 weeks and you've got your homemade iron water. So That your rusty iron water is what you will dip your leaves in and what you will dip your rusty metal in when you're building your sandwich. Okay, so you have all of these things, and then you build. You put your veggies, you put your leaves, you put all of these ingredients, and then you have all your papers, and then you get your other tile and you put it on top. And sometimes I like to use clamps to hold it together as tight, because you want it to be as tight as you possibly can, these bundles. And then you tie it with some twine. Get some twine and you tie it really tight both ways, around this way and around that way. Now, if you're doing this with someone other than yourself, like your students, or you're doing it with a group of people, it's good to have a roll of masking tape, because when this is all wounded up with the twine and it's ready to go in the steamer, you can get the masking tape and put it on the edge of the twine, and that's how you can tell whose is whose. Okay. Now, speaking of steamers, we're going to be steaming these papers, so we need to talk about what goes in the steamer. For this project, you need to have a steamer or a pot that is only dedicated to eco printing. This is not something that you can use from your kitchen and then go back and forth. And what I've done is I've gone to several thrift stores, and you can get a pot or a steamer, inexpensively from Goodwill or Salvation Army. And then you use that only for eco printing. If it's a steamer, in the bottom of the steamer, you can have a combination of things. You can just use water and have steam. You don't have to put anything in it. But what I like to put in it kind of, I think, enhances my prints and brings out the colors of the tannins and the leaves, which is a combination of onion skins, wood chips, dried eucalyptus that I've used from printing, still have a lot of tannins in them, so I use those. Various teas that have fruits in it, black beans. You could use a lot of natural things, twigs, walnut bark, anything. Sumac. I've used a bunch of things, and I put it all in the bottom of the pot. I pour a cup of apple cider vinegar in there, and then I heat it up with hot water. Then your bundles will be on top. If there's like a steamer basket or a level, where I have a tamale steamer that has 3 levels. So in the bottom pot will be all the, what we call witch's brew or eco dyer's brew. And then that is by itself. And then your steamer pot is above it. And then I have another 3-tiered steamer that I use. But what I did earlier today for everyone was I made a sandwich, because you steam it for about 2 to 3 hours. And I wanted everyone to be able to see what a batch or a bundle looks like. So I went ahead and did this in the morning, and now I'm going to reveal it to you. And like I said, I did forget to put onion skins in it, but that's the only thing it doesn't have. I use mostly oak leaves and maple, some eucalyptus. Oh, and I wanted to talk to you about, that reminds me. Depending on where you are, as far as what season it is, and let's say you don't have any leaves on the trees, and oh darn, I can't do this project for a while. Well, you actually can. You can get beets from the store, you can get red cabbage, you can get purple carrots. You could definitely get onion skins from your local grocery store, but also rose leaves work. A lot of times, if you go to your local florist, they will give you the scrapings from off of the bouquets that they make, and rose leaves will be in there. Rose leaves work very well. It's always worth a shot to try the other leaves, but I know rose leaves are a good printer. And then you might even get some eucalyptus or anything that's left over from that they didn't want. But you could collect that and you could do prints. So it doesn't have to necessarily be spring or summer. And when it is spring or summer next time, maybe you can, collect a few leaves if you want to do this in the wintertime, or press them in old phone books, newspaper, or put them in a Ziploc bag in the freezer. So you can do this whenever you want. Now, I'm just gonna, this is a bundle that I had earlier, but I'm just gonna try to hold it up for you so you could see what each thing did in the bundle. These are just pieces of rust. And sometimes if you leave it in there too long, the rusty stuff will turn black. That's the iron. So from the rusty metal, you can get oranges and blacks. That's the blue cabbage. I mean, red cabbage. It gives blue. Gives a pretty blue. And eucalyptus gave a pretty orange. And when I did this earlier, I had folded some watercolor paper for a book. But I love the way you can use these papers in your altered books, in your journals, as bookmarks, as collage art. And there's so many possibilities that you can do with this. That's why I love it. And you see the purple carrot. Some of it printed, some of it didn't. Now, I always try to tell everyone, don't be disappointed if something didn't come out the way you had hoped or you had intended. Every time, I've been doing this for 4 years, and in those 4 years, every bundle has come out different. It could be in the same pot and the same amount of leaves. Everything is different. Your water is different, the pH level in your water, the soil is different from where you got the leaves. I mean, there's so many factors that go into it that give you just different results every time. That's a beautiful red. Did that eucalyptus. But these came out really beautiful. And I love the red cabbage. Gave a pretty purple. Sometimes it does. Blues and pretty purples. So many pretty colors. So I gotta flip this. This is like, every time I open a bundle, I feel like it's Christmas morning all over again. I just love it. I love it so, and it keeps me coming back for more every time because I know it's going to be different. So that's this side, and then you flip it, and that's this side. Now that's what it looks like when it's wet, okay? But I'm also going to show you some when they're completely dry. Let's go ahead and unwrap this one and see what it did. This eucalyptus gave speckles. A lot of times maple leaves will give speckles. This red cabbage strips gave purples and blues. When they mix with the rusty metal, sometimes they'll give you all sorts of colors and happy little accidents and unexpected surprises that you just had no idea, and you're just oohing and eyeing and just loving it. Beautiful rusty washer. Then I love to print quotes on them and write on them, and sometimes if your backgrounds don't come out well, you can always paint them with watercolor. It's watercolor paper. And I'll show you how I've done that when I get to my example booklets that I've made. Oak leaves. Ooh, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful colors. That beautiful eucalyptus right there. Came out so nice. I don't know, this is always exciting to me. I hope everyone's just oohing and eyeing as much as I am. Oh, I just love that color. It's just so gorgeous. Okay, so a couple more layers. Ooh, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. We can ooh-ah together. Okay, so that's the other one that I had from this morning with the beautiful, beautiful results from all the different leaves and veggies. That was beautiful. Okay, now I want to talk to you a little bit about some books that I've made, the way things print. This was an example that I did last time, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about fading. A lot of these things that we use, or I use, when I'm printing paper are what you call fugitive. Fugitive means that they fade away. So, like for example, beets, red cabbage, purple carrot. If you try to print that on fabric, it would fade away. And if these were left in sunlight for a long period of time, it would fade away over time. It hasn't done it on me so far because I don't have these in direct sunlight, but I'm just letting you know that that's why I use a lot of these things that I wouldn't use necessarily on fabric, but I use them on paper. Because paper, you don't wash paper. Paper just, you can incorporate it in so many different ways and so many different things that you do. This is a booklet I made. Let me see the front. This is the front. I love stitching, but in the background of these, I use some metallic watercolors. And it's just a little folded accordion, little sewn in book, but I just kind of wanted to show you what you can do. These are pecan leaves and mostly washers and miniature rose petals. What you can do, what you can add to your different prints. And then if we flip this over, some of them I have on both sides, some of them I don't. But you can see how the metallic watercolors just make this so beautiful. I use washi tape, I use stickers. A lot of materials that I use for my altered books, I use in eco printing as well. It go together so well. But I wanted to show you that smoke bush, miniature rose petals. I use lace, I use different kinds of twine and jute. I use branches most of the time from the sides of my book or books. Here's another one that this one is completed. This is a slit and slot book. And the huge, huge pecan leaves, all the way from Louisiana. My in-laws have a pecan tree. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about the papers you can use to eco print on. You don't necessarily have to use watercolor paper. I think I've tried just about every paper there is, with the exception of notebook paper. But I've used copy paper before. I've used that manila tag board or manila drawing paper. Looks like a manila folder. That prints beautifully with this eco printing in rust. I've also used deli paper, which is very, very thin, but, and of course, something like that, you can't soak in the alum and the copper sulfate because, of course, it would tear in your hands. It's so thin. But try cutting up a manila folder, and it's just like manila cardstock, and it just prints beautifully. This is another little booklet that I had done. This is still in progress, but I'm using watercolors in the background. I'm drawing into it. This is another slit and slot book. And I'm still in the progress of doing, but I wanted you to see, especially like this page, this background is all colorful. I haven't done this one yet. So this is without, and this particular bundle, I did not use any veggies to enhance the background, but this is how it looks without the watercolors in the background, with the rust peeping through and the foliage or the botanicals peeping through. And those are just some of the examples I have. Now, I also wanted to talk to you about tips. Okay, I wanted to make sure I went over everything, so I pulled out my handout for you. Whether you're doing this in your classroom or you're doing it at home, it gets very, very messy. So if you don't have a space dedicated for this, that you don't mind getting messy, make sure you cover up your space with a plastic cloth. If you are doing this in your classroom, while your students are making their bundles, what you can be doing is boiling your acorns and your walnuts and your teas and your onion skins in the bottom of your pot. All of this should be done while they're layering the work, because it takes a long time to layer. It takes about 30 minutes, and it could take even longer depending on how long they work on their designs. If you're not using a steamer and you just have an old pot, then you'll need to set the bundles on top of like some bricks or something in the bottom of your pot, so they won't fall into the water and fall into the dye bath, because if they do, you might get a lot of black and you lose your colors because of the iron. So keep that in mind. You should always wear rubber gloves, especially when you're handling your bundles, or tongs. But like when you're building your sandwich, I like to use the vinyl gloves because it helps me. I feel like I can feel it more. When I have the rubber gloves on, I can't really feel what I'm doing. And if you're doing this in your classroom, it'll be spread out for like over a week, I would say. And you would have to do it like every other day, because I'm thinking for multiple class periods, like if let's say you did this in one day and then the next day students would have to unbundle. So if they're unbundling, you don't have that available for them for the next class to do it. So you might not be able to, depending on how many pieces of wood, how many pieces of tile you have, as to whether how many kids can do it. I've never done this with a group larger than 10. So, and I always have 3 steamer pots usually going, big steamer pots, but it all just depends on how many you're doing it with. Okay, that's pretty much. How are we doing on time?
Turn me back on. Destina, we are doing fantastic on time because we have a load of questions.
Okay, great.
So I'm going to stick my head in my computer here and start from the top. So the first question was, have you ever, or can you use leaves from veggies like radish tops or spinach?
I've never tried spinach. I have not tried radish tops. I've tried the orange carrots and I didn't get much of anything. Okay. But I always know that these are my strong ones that I know give good results, but I've never tried those. But I always say everything is worth a try.
Well, and that is, what have you tried that you thought was going to be super successful and failed?
Well, I've tried lemon peel and lime peel, and what I found that they do is they change the acid content, so they brighten up the colors. So what I like to do is I like to give my workshop attendants like a lime and a lemon to slice up, and then afterwards, if they want to brighten it up, they just use a paintbrush and then just brush on the lemon and the lime just to brighten up their prints.
That is amazing. Oh my gosh, I would have never even dreamed that. Okay, next has to do with a little bit of safety. Any concern about touching like rusty things and the bacteria that is from rust?
Well, I never touch them if I don't have gloves on.
Gotcha.
I keep gloves in my car. I keep wipes in my car. So whenever I'm touching them, I'm always protected. But yes, that is,
Yeah.
and if you don't, I'm glad you mentioned that because I forgot to mention the ventilation. If you don't have proper ventilation in your classroom, it's really, really good to do this either outside or with the windows open, or then you have to, and I'm not mentioning COVID at all, but
Right.
just if it weren't COVID, you would need a face mask, or at least be able to provide one for each of your students.
Absolutely. Which was the questions about the chemical smell. If you're doing it outside, would you just use like a plug-in burner kind of thing to steam outside?
Yes, I don't use the propane camper stoves at all. I could, but I use everything on hot plate.
Gotcha. Perfect. Also, how would you make a larger sheet? How do you steam a larger sheet?
Well, if you have a larger sheet, you have to have the size paper to your size container. So let's say you have this
Gotcha.
huge pot. Like I have a turkey roaster. I can do, I do. I have them
Perfect.
pretty big. I've got a lot. But you can also do sheets individually. Now, these can't be rust stacked like sandwiches, but you can do sheets individually and roll them up, but they just wouldn't have any rust on them. Because the
Gotcha.
rust, when you try to roll a big sheet of paper or any sheet of paper around a dowel or a copper pipe, what happens is the rust will tear the paper.
Right, sure.
And it won't be a perfect amount of pressure around that dowel or that pipe, so you won't get a good print.
Has anything ever like bore a hole right through? Like my brain goes to like when you bleach something, and if you use too much bleach, it will you know,
Not with
compromise
me,
the fabric.
not with me, because I don't put it in there for longer than I can imagine. If you leave it in there too long, I wouldn't leave it past 3 hours. 2 to 3 hours is a good amount, because no matter how thick your paper is, I mean, rusty metal will eventually, seep through it, and especially the temperature of the steam.
And after it's all dry and it's like sat on a bookshelf for a while, it's done processing so it doesn't continue to eat through the paper.
Well, over time, I have been told that it will. Like I said, I've only been doing it for 4 years and it hasn't with me, but I never keep it out. There's certain things when I'm printing with just rust, like on fabric and on cotton, what I do is I give it a wash in salt water and I give it a wash in baking soda, and that helps it. And if you want to make a paste of baking soda and kind of like brush it lightly over it so it won't continue to rot and deteriorate that paper,
Perfect.
that's a good thing.
Very good. Definitely lots of comments about amazing, beautiful prints. So, and no doubt they are. And
Thank you.
somebody did say they might not have saw the first part where you can do multiple layers and pages in one press. So you did sort of this accordion pleated sandwich.
Yes. And this is a small sandwich. I did these 2 papers back and forth, but I could easily do 3 or 4 of these.
Okay.
But just keep in mind that the bigger your bundles, the less space you're going to have in your steamer. So it all depends on who you're doing it with. If you're just doing it by yourself, you can make as big a sandwich as you want. But
Gotcha.
yeah.
Yeah, for the sake of time and how many kids you're doing, gotcha. Also, thickness of watercolor paper. Lots of people are wondering about the paper, and you talked a little bit about using a wide variety, and a lot of it is probably trial and error. But is there a particular pound or a particular brand that you use?
I put it in the handout. Let me see. There's so many. I know I did. Canson.
Yep.
And the other one, I don't see it, but I know I put it in here. But I like to use, I don't know what happened to it. To me, it all just depends on what size I'm using. I've used every brand of watercolor paper that there is. I've used Master's Touch, I've used Strathmore, I've used Canson. Just like for the books that I did earlier, I used this.
Yep.
But I have also used the expensive ones from Blick when I'm trying to treat myself that are like $11 a sheet, the huge ones that I'll cut down.
Yep.
But I have noticed that you get a better print when it's smooth and not textured. Some watercolor paper is textured.
Yep.
Versus a smooth, and if it has a smooth surface, you get a better print.
And I sometimes get this backwards, and art teachers help me out, but I think a cold press is smooth.
Yes.
A hot press is textured.
Yes. And
So
I always go for cold press.
Gotcha. Very good. What other materials can you print on? You mentioned watercolor paper and you mentioned fabric. Have you tried anything else?
I print on silk, wool, cotton. I have printed on watercolor paper, manila folder type. I guess you can call it a cardstock.
Bag would work?
It would, but you'd have to make sure your iron water is very strong. And the darker it is, of course, the less you might be able to see.
See the print. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And another question was, did you show us a steamer pot? Did you show the pot, or is it?
No, I didn't, but I can.
If it's easy, show us. If not, then you can just tell us.
Yeah, I can show you.
Another question was about if you steam them, can you unveil them the following day? I'm pretty sure the answer is yes. Oh, so yeah, it's just, yes, steamer pots, just like you would steam.
This is a tamale steamer. Actually, it's a 3-level, and I'll show you what's in the bottom part. This
So like
is ready. This is ready for the next batch.
Fantastic.
Yes, an old canning pot. You can get them from Goodwill for $5.
And if you are doing this in the classroom, would you also use like a tabletop burner?
Oh yes, absolutely. I have a double one and I have a single one. But also,
so if a teacher steams the sandwich for, and I giggle because if you've just come in late to this webinar, we're not talking about real food, so you'll have to rewind and watch. But the students have bundled it up. If the teacher steams it for the students, could she bring it back to class the next day and have the students unveil it the next day?
Yeah, that's what they'll do. I have noticed no difference. I couldn't wait that long. I'm just an anxious person. I want to see it. But I have, sometimes I'll put something on the steam and I'll wake up in the morning and then I'll just open it up the next morning and I'll do it overnight.
Gotcha. What if you didn't steam it? If you left that sandwich for like a week or longer and then unveiled it, do you think you would get color but just maybe muted?
Some have said that the color is better. I honestly haven't seen a difference, but I haven't been able to keep it that long. There was only one time I actually forgot about a bundle, and it was like 2 weeks, but I didn't see any difference in it. It just wasn't hot to touch, but it looked the same to me.
So you could get the effect without the steaming, but you would have to wait. How long do you think you'd have to
Oh,
wait to get that kind of vibrancy?
in the traditional way, when they used to bury it, I mean, some sun dye, just like you do tea, like for a month or so. I mean, it takes a long time. You can bury
Gotcha.
it for weeks or bury it for a month, and then it'll do it. It just takes a lot longer.
Again, another question about the steaming is, could you make a whole bunch of stacks and then wait to steam them? You don't have to steam them right away, right?
No, you don't. I made that first thing this morning, and I didn't steam it until noon.
Gotcha.
So they don't have to go in the steamer right away. No.
And another safety question, pages are safe to touch after they've been steamed, after they're dry. Like you wouldn't really have to worry about rust or chemicals after that.
No, but like I said, you don't have to worry about alum is the safest chemical used in this process, because we even use it for, and if you don't have anything else, this is what I started using. When I first started doing it 4 years ago, I didn't have the chemical grade of alum, or I didn't know anything about copper or anything. But they're pretty safe as long as you always keep gloves on your hands. And after they're done, all said and done, all dry, and you don't have to worry about any of that.
Very good. Another question about preserving. Have you ever put like a permanent medium, like a matte medium, gloss medium, or a fixative over the top?
No, I have not. I know some people put like a waxy coat of beeswax on it to shine it, but I don't know that they do that for the rust part. They're speaking of
Interesting.
just botanicals only, and it gives them like a nice shine, but it kind of like preserves the top.
Yep, I would think collaging with it would add a permanence to it, and I think it's certainly worth a try. I know that a lot of mediums, particularly the fine art mediums, do have light fast qualities to them, and so it could be worth it, but it will alter the way that it looks unless it's a matte medium.
Mm-hmm.
Another question somebody wanted to know is your blouse one of your creations?
Yes, yes, it is. It's silk.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but tell us about, you actually have a page where your art is there. You also sell some art. So, I mean, it is the holiday season, lots of gift giving going on. So you go ahead and plug that because it's beautiful stuff.
Thank you. I don't have that many, what are they called? My mind just went blank. Listings on my Etsy shop. My Earthy Apparel is the name of my Etsy shop, but which I just started. So I'm gonna be adding some more items to that. And Earthy Apparel and Home Decor is my page on Facebook, and that's just kind of a way for me to list what show I will be selling at next. But the bulk of my earnings come from doing different shows. But ever since COVID, I haven't done any, and I don't do any over the winter because it's just too cold. And a lot of them got canceled due to COVID, but I start back up in the spring and summer. So I'm looking forward to doing some shows in the spring and summer, some local ones.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. How do you flatten the paper after printing it?
After printing it, it stays pretty flat, but when it's 100% dry, I'll just hang it up to dry on a rack or lay it out flat to dry. But then most of mine is in the one that's in an accordion style book. I'll just press it with my hands, just, opposite ways until it's flat, or I put a heavy book on it and it flattens it. It all depends on where it ends up. Like, for example, if it ends up in a book I'm already working on, an altered book, the book's going to flatten it. So it all depends.
Do you think if you ironed it like with a wax paper or parchment paper, do you think it would change the colors? Would the heat change?
It has on the veggies. It will on the veggies. It might
Okay.
make the others more permanent, the botanical, because all of that's not going anywhere. But I've noticed it does fade a little on the blues and the pinks and the purples.
Gotcha.
But I have ironed it before.
Another question is, so are you boiling the plant matter on the bottom level of the steamer? So is there water in there?
Yes,
And
yes.
then set up while steaming the papers on the top level. So the bottom, in that particular setup that you had, the plant stuff was on the bottom, and there is you'd put water in there too.
Yes, I fill it up with hot water. After all the veggies and stuff that are in there, then I put a cup of apple cider vinegar in there, and then I just fill it up with hot water, and then I start that like an hour prior to me doing the sandwiches and everything.
Very good.
That's the first thing you put on the hot plate. So it takes a while to heat up.
This is a silly question, so it's coming from Kris Bakke. Does it smell lovely or does it smell funky?
Well, if you can believe it, I've always hated the smell of vinegar, and I use it so much now I've become immune to it. But every time I print, I'm usually always using eucalyptus, and I love the smell of eucalyptus. So I guess I've kind of grown accustomed to the smell. The iron water is very, very strong, but it doesn't bother me at all. But that's why I guess I'm in the back of the house.
Right.
I wouldn't do it in the main part of the house. No.
In the steamer that you showed us, the 3-pot one, the two on top must have holes in the bottom, right? So that it all rises up.
Yes, they do.
That makes sense.
I'll show you right quick.
Yep, perfect. So do fall, like in autumn, the fallen leaves, like yellows, oranges, reds, work differently?
Yes, that's what I wanted to talk about. It all depends on your area, what leaf. You just have to test them and see if the ones in summer print stronger than the ones in the fall. I've had some leaves that when they get that color, they're releasing the tannins and they print great. And then I've had it the opposite, where some of them, they just don't print at all. It just all depends on your area, what trees are in your area. And at first, when I first started doing this, I thought that in the fall, if you saw the yellow leaf, that's what you were going to get. You were going to get yellow leaves and you were going to get red leaves and orange leaves. No, that's not the case at all. Most of the leaves that I've saved for printing in the winter, they're all from summer.
They're all from summer.
They're all green.
Gotcha.
I have very few in the fall because I just haven't had luck with much in the fall.
How about, have you ever used seeds? I wonder if seeds would work to give color. Like, I'm not even sure what I mean by that, but sometimes seeds seem like there's different colored seeds and stuff like that. I wondered if that would make any difference. Or what about spices? That was a question. Spices like turmeric, which is...
Turmeric gives you yellows. Yes. On the handout, there's a little list of veggies and spices that give you colors, different colors. But turmeric, I have tried. I've tried the fresh root that I've sliced up. I'll put in the pot. Or you can also put that on your paper as one of your veggies that you would dip in the vinegar. But it gives really pretty yellows. And I've also sprinkled some turmeric, like on top. If I want something to be a bright yellow that wouldn't normally give me a good print, to do that, I'll enhance it. But turmeric is fugitive, meaning it will fade away, which is why I use these things on paper, but I wouldn't use them on fabric.
Have you ever did you ever press on glass? And so I'm not sure, Susan asked the question, I'm not sure if that meant, like, would it print on glass, or if she's meaning the sandwich?
Oh, glass. I've never tried glass. I would kind of be afraid to put that high of a heat on glass.
Yeah.
Well, then I think about glass blowing. They have some really high temperatures. So,
Yeah.
but no, I've never used glass. Only ceramic tile and wood blocks. Also, for when you ask the question about the rolling or the large pieces that I roll, I use copper pipes for that most of the time. I roll the paper on copper pipes, which also helps bring the colors out. It acts as a mordant.
Oh, very cool.
And also I use wooden dowels too.
Yep.
So either a wooden dowel or a copper pipe. And I've also used PVC pipe
Gotcha. That makes sense.
for those big
How many
ones.
sandwiches can go in the pot at a time?
Like in my pot, I can get quite a few, but it all depends on the size pot you're using and the size of your sandwiches. Like if you were using something like that, then you could get about 8, maybe 3 or 4 in each layer, and I have 2 layers. So I would say about 6, maybe 6 to 8. But it just all depends on how thick they are. So if I'm doing this with a workshop, I'll only give them 10 sheets of paper, just so they can know how it would look. I wouldn't give them, just like a whole big stack, because the bigger your sandwich is, the less room you have for other people. But if it's just a few of us, like me and 2 other people, then we make whatever we want.
Sure. How do you save leaves? Do you press them?
I press mine in books. I have I'm lucky, whereas I have a deep freezer dedicated to leaves. So I have a freezer full of leaves. And I've organized them in books. So I'll have a oak book, I have a maple book, I have a ginkgo book, I have just about every leaf. I have a sumac and a walnut. Those atlases, old atlases are great for the sumac and because they're long.
Yeah.
Walnut leaves. So I have those all in my freezer, except the only ones I put in plastic bags are the eucalyptus.
Gotcha.
Because they'll
Because does a plastic bag ruin a leaf?
The only thing I used to, when I started, I used to put the leaves in plastic bags, but as they freeze, they bend and they're not flat. And I like a flat leaf. The only ones that it doesn't matter is eucalyptus.
And you've tried, and you do print with flowers too. You've tried different flowers as well, right?
I have tried flowers. I don't get that much luck on flowers with paper as I do with leather. On leather, flowers print beautifully.
And speaking of leather, printing on fabric is actually a different process, right?
It's a totally different process. It's like for every different type of fabric, there's a different way of doing it. It's like a totally different thing.
So Lindsay asked about fabric, and Lindsay, Destina gives all her information out. So you might want to email her a little bit about the fabric question, and she can take that. So we have about 5 minutes. Can you quick just do a little review of this, putting the sandwich together, sort of the order of how to do it? And we'll sort of review that, and then time just flew by.
Well, the outside would of course be your tile. This tile happens to have ridges on it, so I like the smooth part to be here. Now, I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but when you put in your paper on here, if you want leaves to print on both sides, then what you would have to do is you would have to put leaves here on your tile and then lay your paper down, but you have to put these leaves upside down. So the vein side would be up on this part.
Yeah.
Right. And then you everything you want to put here, and then you put your paper on, and then you put your leaves on this side as well, but then face down. So you can
If
print
you're
on both
doing
sides.
one piece, if you really do just want one piece and one-sided, you take the tile, you put the paper on top, you put your leaves and rust, and then would you put anything on top of that before you put the other tile on top?
No, but
Okay.
I've never done that before.
Well, and kind of why would you when you have this opportunity to create? You might as well create like a crazy person.
Yeah, it's
Equals
like
art teachers everywhere.
this would be an extremely thin sandwich. Most of my sandwiches look like this.
Yes. Yeah, because that just makes perfect sense for all the amount of work that you go to.
It
Oh my
is a lot of
goodness.
prepping. It's a lot of work, but the results are so amazing. It's all worth it. But I enjoy every aspect of it, from the gathering of the leaves to the final result that goes in your artwork. It's incredible and it's amazing. And I was so glad and honored to be able to share it with all of you.
Oh, Destina, I can't thank you enough. Like I said, you're definitely a giant bonus of 2020. You've made my year so extra, and I'm grateful for that. And I know that I will continue to follow you and ask you questions and have you back. And we are going to take Destina's lesson plan and create a Nasco Artworks lesson plan. That our lesson plans are on nascoeducation.com. We also have a subscription platform called Nasco Educate. If you're interested in that, we can give you a 2-week free trial. We have lesson plans on there, and all of these webinars and PDs are housed on there too. Destina, your work is incredible. Everybody, check out the handout, check out her Etsy page. Think about utilizing her maybe in the summer for a workshop, because she's fantastic. And she has given you everything that you need, and says to contact her too if you have questions. So she couldn't be more willing to share, and I'm so, so grateful for that. Next week is our final Maker Monday of the year, which makes me a little bit sad, but y'all need a break and we need to put on our creative hats for 2021. It's going to be Ann Basting. Dr. Ann Basting is she is an author, and she is the CEO and founder of Time Slips. It is creative care with elderly and lots of dementia patients. And she has developed the most amazing way to interact in an artistic way with elderly patients. And so my brain went to like grandparents and students and virtual learning. And I think that she not only is going to emphasize the need for art in our world, but also give us this amazing opportunity to unlock how people communicate through art. And it's going to be extremely delightful. It won't be like a making session, but I think you will come out of it with a ton of ideas and some great ways to not only communicate with your students and unlock their artistic ability, but also ways for students to communicate with grandparents and other senior type citizens. So it'll be really, really good. Destina, thank you so much. Everybody.
Can I say one thing?
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for this opportunity, and a big shout out and thank you to Margaret, who without her I wouldn't have even met you.
I know,
So
right? That's
Margaret,
the
if you're
dot
watching,
connecting.
yeah, if you're watching, it's not just Margaret, it's art teachers. Art teachers rock. And
You are
I
so
have
right.
had the pleasure of working with art teachers in Louisiana and Indiana. And I wouldn't even know about this process if it wasn't for the wonderful teachers in Indiana, the art teachers that we meet up every year, and they just teach us so much, and we just have a great time making art. And I just want to share with everyone what I've learned. And I just love it.
Absolutely. That is the beauty of the art community. It is this kind of interaction. And it is, I saw you on this virtual conference, reached out, and this happened. And so thank you so much for that. And thank all of you for what you do. Everybody, keep staying safe, be well, be happy, and keep teaching art.